Revealed, after 10 years of love and sacrifice, a shocking text exposes a hidden family divide. Emily sat in her dimly lit kitchen, nursing a lukewarm cup of coffee, the clock ticking toward midnight, reminding her of yet another long day at the hospital. After putting in her shift, she was drained, both physically and emotionally. Each pulse of exhaustion felt like an echo of the cries and whispers from patients she hoped to comfort. It was a cycle she understood all too well, but today, that rhythm shattered as her phone vibrated against the table. A message from an unknown number flashed across the screen. "Your mother left an inheritance. Mark is managing it." The words tinged her heart with confusion and anger. Emily's chest tightened. She could almost hear the clatter of childhood memories, the laughter mixed with the tears in their small home. She had poured everything into raising her children, a single mother bearing the weight of sacrifice, while Mark, her brother, danced in a different world. This news felt like betrayal wrapped in a genteel bow. He had turned his back on their roots, leaving her to face the family's struggles alone while he clawed his way up in his corporate tower. The conflict within her churned. Part of her wanted to protect what little dignity remained unblemished by greed. Another part burned with a desire to confront the man who had forgotten their shared promise of family loyalty. Was this inheritance a blessing or a cruel joke? Her emotions were a tangled ball of resentment and longing. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Emily's mind raced as she drove to the city the next day, her steering wheel gripped tight like it offered some measure of control. Each block led her closer to the polished high-rise where Mark worked, a world away from her daily life in a small town. She could feel her heart pound in her throat as she approached. Sparks of fury and fear lit up her insides, creating a tempest of doubt. Why had Mark hidden this from her? Anger threatened to bubble over, but it was the thought of her children's hope, a belief in family, that reined her in. When she finally confronted him outside his firm, the tension was palpable. The contrast between their lives screamed louder than words. He was expensively clad, while she wore the uniform of a nurse. As she voiced her pain and fury, Mark's practiced demeanor flickered briefly, revealing a flash of defensiveness. "It's not about the money, Emily. It's about practicality," he countered, sounding more like a lawyer than a brother. In that moment of anguish, a realization struck her. They were not just fighting over money, but over values that had defined their upbringing. Had ambition severed the ties they once held dear? The silhouettes of passers-by in cafe windows bore witness to their estrangement, and her heart sank deeper. What did it mean to be a family when love felt dwarfed by the shadows of betrayal? As the confrontation escalated, a new wave of determination coursed through her. She stepped back, not just from Mark, but from the heavy dread of generations of struggle. Was reclaiming their mother's legacy worth tearing down what little family they had left? Just as her mind settled on one question, her phone pinged with another message, leaving her heart suspended in anticipation. What revelations awaited her next? This battle was only beginning. Emily stared at her phone, her thumping heart echoing the chill of uncertainty as she considered the implications of another mysterious message. The urgency swelled within her, a signal that destiny was poised to push her into uncharted territory. With one last glance at Mark, who stood there defiantly, she returned to her car. She needed clarity. There was too much at stake. Pulling into a nearby cafe parking lot, she took a deep breath and opened the message. The text read, "Meet me. This is about your mother." Who is this person? The ambiguous threat stirred within her another layer to the betrayal. This was not just about Mark anymore. A sense of foreboding settled deep in her stomach, but curiosity gnawed away at her initial hesitation. She replied, arranging to meet at the park down the street from Mark's office. Her mind racing with possibilities and apprehensions. As she parked, the sun dipped below the trees, casting long shadows that painted the sidewalk in shades of gray. Emily stepped out, the cool air invigorating her senses. This was a moment that could shape her life in ways she couldn't predict, so much like her days at the hospital when she had learned to embrace uncertainty while striving to provide care and hope. Her hands trembled slightly as she folded them into her pockets, steeling herself. Sitting at a bench, she passed time glancing at the people strolling by. Their laughter, carefree obliviousness, contrasted sharply with the storm brewing in her own heart. Each minute felt like an hour until she finally spotted a figure approaching, an older woman, perhaps late 50s, with silver-streaked hair cascading down her back. "Emily?" the woman asked, her voice laced with recognition and apprehension. "Yes, that's me," Emily replied, barely able to mask her curiosity. "Who are you?" The woman hesitated, her eyes darting to the left before settling back on Emily's searching gaze. "I'm Kate, a family friend of your mother's. There are things you need to know. Things that change everything." As Emily listened, Kate laid out a timeline of events that shifted her very understanding of her mother's life, revealing decisions made long before she was born. Each revelation twisted the knife deeper. Her mother's inheritance was tied to a long-buried family secret that tied back to Mark's dealings in ways she could never have anticipated. With every word, Emily felt herself teetering on the brink of recognition not just of her mother, but of her own identity, rooted in a legacy far richer than she had known. "I don't care about the money," she snapped, her voice tinged with defensiveness. "I just want to understand why it was hidden." "Why him?" "The inheritance is secondary. This is about a life of choices, your mother's heart, her dreams," Kate replied, her expression sympathetic yet firm. "It's about understanding the shadows that gave rise to your lives." With these words hanging in the air, Emily's resolve began to crystallize. She was not simply a pawn in this game of familial betrayal. There was power in knowledge, in understanding how to reclaim her narrative. "What do I need to do?" she pressed, her determination surfacing even stronger than before. Kate leaned closer, her voice a whisper of urgency. "You must confront Mark again. There are reasons he kept this from you and truths that could unravel your family completely." The stakes had escalated beyond measure. Emily left the meeting with a new determination, the weight of revelation pushing her into a more complex battlefield. As she approached her car, she felt the sharp edges of her past and future collide, wrestling with fear, but driven by an unmistakable resolve. What lay ahead was not merely the reclamation of an inheritance, but the forging of a new identity. The battle was not just with Mark anymore. It was about uncovering who she truly was. As she turned the key in the ignition, her phone buzzed again, a final message flickering on the screen, reigniting the fire within her. The time had come to face her brother and the truth that threatened to change everything. Emily clenched the steering wheel as she sat in her car, letting the weight of Kate's words settle in the silence. Confronting Mark again felt both daunting and inevitable. This wasn't just about their fractured relationship anymore. It was a matter of uncovering the truth that had been woven into the very fabric of her life. She took a deep breath, pondering the delicate threads of past decisions that had led to this moment. As she drove towards Mark's office, she replayed their last conversation in her mind. His indignation and defensiveness had stung her, but what cut deeper was the realization that he had betrayed her trust. If she were to pull him back into the light, stripping away the shadows he had concealed, she must approach the impending confrontation with both bravery and strategy. Arriving at the office, the vibrant dynamics of the city felt like an unrelated backdrop to her internal chaos. She parked with purpose, each stride towards the building fueled by a mix of fear and fierce determination. The door swung open as if waiting for her entry, and the atmosphere buzzed around her, a stark contrast to the quiet storm brewing within. Inside, Mark was in a meeting with his team, but Emily's focus wasn't on mere professionalism. It was on dismantling the veils he had placed between them. She waited, observing him through the glass walls. His authoritative presence commanded respect, and a familiar pang of longing shot through her. How had it come to this? It was as if the man she had loved was a mere apparition of the past, eclipsed by secrets and lies. Finally, their eyes met through the glass. For a moment, she saw a flicker of recognition. It flared through her, igniting her courage. The team dissolved as the meeting ended, and Mark approached with that infuriatingly charming grin, unaware of the tempest that awaited him. "Emily, I didn't expect to see you here," he said, but his tone lacked the warmth it once carried. "Can we talk?" she replied, leveling her gaze at him. The usual softness in her voice had hardened, and she took no delight when his smile faded. "Sure, everything okay?" he asked, concern creeping into his features. "Not even close," she said, bypassing the pleasantries as she led him away from their colleagues. They stepped out onto a secluded balcony, overlooking the cityscape, a fitting arena for their confrontation. "What is going on?" Mark asked, crossing his arms defensively. Emily noted the tension, the walls he had built around himself. Evidently, he sensed the gravity of her intensity. "I met with Kate today," she began, her eyes steady on his, searching for fragments of truth hidden behind his facade. "I know about Mom's inheritance and why it was kept from me." He stiffened, the warm breeze faltering in the space between them. "Emily, I don't," she interrupted, her voice barely above a whisper but filled with iron. "Don't deny it. You have to tell me why you did this. Why did you hide the truth?" Air hung thick with unspoken words, and she felt the tremors of her resolve threatening to crack under the strain of emotion. Mark's silence was an answer in itself, and the bitterness of betrayal tasted sour on her tongue. "Did you think keeping me in the dark would protect me?" she pressed, her pulse racing. "Or is it that you were protecting yourself?" He shifted, looking out over the railing, the reflections of the city's lights twinkling like scattered stars. But Emily wasn't just fighting to tear down his walls. She was ready to reveal the heart of her own hurt. "Emily, you don't know the whole story. There are reasons for everything," he finally said, turning to face her, his tone earnest yet guarded. "So tell me," she demanded, her voice trembling with the weight of her own desperation. "I need to understand. I'm tired of living in the shadows. I deserve the truth." The air crackled with tension, and Mark's expression wavered between defiance and vulnerability. She could see the internal battle raging within him, and in that moment, she realized they were both fighting for their identities, albeit on opposite sides of the battlefield. "Some truths come with consequences you're not ready to face," he murmured. The challenge ignited a fire within her. This was her confrontation of fear cloaked in familial loyalty. "Then let me decide if I'm ready. Enough with the half-truths, Mark. I'm done being shielded from reality." With those words, she took a step closer, prepared to dismantle the barriers between them. The stakes had massively escalated, and as uncertainties fueled her fire, the urgency of her mission became clear. She would unearth the truth or lose herself trying what lay beneath his guarded exterior. The moment was ripe for revelation, and she could almost taste it. But would he share the secrets that could shatter their lives, or would fear hold him back one last time? Emily's determination clashed with the palpable tension hanging in the air, thick as a fog that refused to lift. Mark's hesitation weighed heavily on her, amplifying her resolve. She could no longer remain the passive recipient of someone else's decisions. The years of unaddressed pain were coiling around her like a serpent, and she saw this confrontation as her moment to strike back. "Don't use the past as an excuse," she said, her voice firm, challenging him to look her in the eye. "If you really cared, you would have respected my right to know." Mark's brow furrowed, a mixture of surprise and anger playing across his features. "Emily, there are deeper issues at play. You don't just want the truth, you want absolution, and it doesn't work like that." The accusation ricocheted through her, igniting a surge of indignation. "I'm not asking for permission to understand my life. I'm demanding it. Did you think the truth would fall apart if you weren't the one delivering it? What have you sacrificed me for?" Her question lingered in the air, and Mark recoiled slightly, as if her words had struck him physically. This was what she needed, not just validation but an awakening. The reality of their lives, intertwined by secrets and the messiness of familial ties, was crashing down around them. He turned to the railing, pulling in a shaky breath. You wouldn't understand what I was trying to protect you from. Some things are not meant to be shared. Not now. What do you think I'm made of? The tempest in her chest boiled over, fueling her words. I've spent years in the dark, piecing together half-truths like a puzzle with missing pieces. What's so terrifying about the truth that you're willing to lie to me, Mark? He turned back sharply, the fire in his eyes matching her own. You think you can handle the fallout? This isn't a matter of just knowing. It could change everything. Change is exactly what I need, she retorted, feeling a tremor of fear but battling it down. Mark had turned her life upside down for too long. The realization that he wanted to keep her in ignorance felt more suffocating than the situation itself. With each second that passed, Emily searched his features, demanding not just the truth but the vulnerability he had denied her. Look, Emily, he implored, his voice catching slightly. I did what I thought was best. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I just wanted to keep you safe. Safe from what? What kind of love is built on lies and omissions? The rawness of her emotions surged, setting her heart racing. I've seen enough of you battling your demons alone. It's time you face them with me, not for me. His posture shifted, vulnerability creeping in as he processed her words. With her heart pounding, she sensed she was close to reaching him. But an internal conflict flickered behind his eyes like a candle struggling against the wind. Mark took a step back, visibly wrestling with the choice laid before him. If I tell you, you might wish you hadn't known. Can we really go back from this? Yes, she insisted, holding onto the hope in her chest, determined to bridge the chasm that had grown dangerously wide. Whatever it is, I will face it head-on. I finally refuse to hide. A tense silence settled around them. Emily's breath quickened, desperation mingling with hope. Would he take the leap with her, or would he let fear dictate their fate once more? With her heart openly bared, she saw the flicker of resolve in his eyes, a subtle shift that led her to believe he might finally be ready to confront the truth, the demons of their history, and the secrets that had long haunted them. As Mark opened his mouth, a sudden noise echoed from the office, behind them a door slamming shut. They both turned to see a figure emerging, and Emily's stomach twisted in apprehension. The moment teetered on the brink of revelation, but now it faced an unexpected intrusion that could change everything she had been fighting for. Who or what had interrupted them, and what new chaos would unfold as secrets whispered just beyond the brink of exposure? As the office door swung open, the figure that emerged was Amy, Mark's younger sister, her eyes darting between them with uncertainty etched across her face. Amy had always been frail yet fierce, a paradox that felt both comforting and daunting within the family dynamic. Emily had been prepared for Mark to share his demons, but now she felt exposed under the weight of Amy's presence. What is going on? Amy's voice trembled, her gaze flitting to Mark, silently demanding answers. Behind the concern in her eyes lay the wary caution of someone who had seen too much in the wake of their family's secrets. Emily felt a sudden shift in her resolve, the momentum of her confrontation with Mark stalling as she shifted her attention from him to Amy. This wasn't merely about hidden truths anymore. Now it involved a third party, one who could either fortify their connection or introduce additional turmoil. Nothing you need to worry about, Mark said, his tone protective, almost reflexive, eliciting a flare of frustration in Emily. How could he claim that when the air was thick with unspoken truths? No? It sure doesn't seem that way. Amy folded her arms, her expression challenging, but softened by her concern for Mark. Look, I know it's been rough, but you need to talk to each other. Emily locked eyes with Mark, desperate to reclaim the intensity that had built between them moments before. She felt the moment slipping away, fear bubbling just beneath the surface. Why don't you tell her what you've been keeping from me? Emily's words pierced through the tension. Maybe it's time for everyone to stop pretending that everything is fine. Mark's voice was low, caution creeping in again, as if he understood now the intricacies of this moment. The vulnerability he had briefly shown faltered under the shadows of secrecy that loomed. No. If we're going to break this cycle, we need to face it together, she urged, her tone becoming more fierce. The lies have been tearing us apart long enough. Mark looked at her, a battle waged behind his eyes, and she could see the conflict between his loyalty to her and the need to protect Amy. It filled her with an unsettling dread, and in that moment, Emily recognized the importance of this confrontation not just for herself, but for everyone involved. Fine. You want the truth? Mark's voice lowered to a murmur, but it was too late. Emily could feel the pull of the truth luring her forward, an invitation coded in fear and exhilaration. Of course I do. But before Mark could answer, Amy interjected, a note of urgency threading through her voice. Wait. You both need to understand something. There's context here we can't ignore. There's a reason he kept things hidden. Emily felt her heart race, the worry etched on Amy's face resonating within her own uncertain emotional landscape. What do you mean? Amy hesitated, glancing at Mark for permission, clearly caught between her siblings and a past that was about to surface. You don't know everything that happened back then. Not with Mom, not with Dad. You only see your part of the story. The truth was a heavy weight, coiling tighter around them, a mixture of betrayal and disbelief spinning within Emily. What was I supposed to see? You both made sure I stayed in the dark. This is my life. As the shadows of their family's secrets shifted ominously, Emily felt a sense of urgency take hold, mingling with anxiety. She recognized this was not merely about Mark's demons or her personal journey anymore. This was a chance for all of them to confront the painful legacy that had been woven into the fabric of their lives. Tell me, Emily commanded, her voice cutting through the tension, slicing through the web of fear that had ensnared them for too long. Now. But Amy's next words would unleash a flood of revelations, propelling Emily toward truths she might not be ready to accept. Would the light of these new revelations bring clarity, or would it cast them deeper into the shadows? Amy's gaze bore into both of them, her usually soft demeanor hardened by the weight of untold stories. I never wanted to bring this up, but you both deserve to know the truth about our parents, she said, her voice steadier than Emily had ever heard before. There was so much that neither of you knew, and it affected how we all grew up. Mark shifted uneasily, glancing away, heart evidently heavy. Emily's heart raced, a tumult of fear and anticipation swirling with every breath. The vulnerability hanging in the air began to morph into an unsettling urge for clarity. What do you mean? Emily pressed, the urgency palpable in her tone. She could feel her thoughts racing, expectations spiraling. She needed to be strong, needed to reclaim control of the narrative that had been unraveled before her. There were things about Mom, Amy began, each word carefully navigated as if they were precious glass. Things she hid from us, but they shaped our lives in ways you couldn't even fathom. As she spoke, Emily felt her defenses rising. It was a reflex, one born of years of avoiding emotional exposure. Deciding to allow this conversation to unfold felt intensely risky, like stepping out onto a precipice without knowing the depth of the fall. Mom dealt with depression on her own. Long before any of us noticed, Amy continued, her voice faltering slightly, as if she carried the weight of both failure and empathy in her delivery. It affected her relationship with Dad, and it affected us. The honesty in Amy's eyes pushed through Emily's unease. It sparked a thought: could facing this truth reshape their shattered history? Why didn't you tell me sooner? Mark finally broke the silence, each inflection laced with anguish. I could have what? Amy shot back, her voice cracking with the intensity of suppressed anger and hurt. Could have saved her? Burned yourself out trying to fix someone who didn't want to be fixed? She was our mother, Mark, and battling her darkness was a delicate dance. It was a burden we shared, but one we were not equipped to bear. Emily absorbed this, her thoughts disjointed, struggling to grasp the implications of a mother fractured, but also protective of her children's innocence. It nudged at her self-awareness. Hadn't she always thought she was responsible for holding the family together, a role based on a warped understanding of strength? What happened with Dad? She asked cautiously, veering into unknown territory. Amy hesitated. He left, she replied softly, defeating the strength she displayed just moments before. When everything became too much, when Mom slipped, he couldn't take it. He left us with the mess. Anger mingled with sadness danced in Amy's eyes, each emotion fighting for supremacy. Emily felt the deep fissure in their family stem from a legacy of unaddressed pain and secrets kept to protect them or perhaps to shield their parents' failures. It gnawed at her understanding of their past, muddling her perception of her own role in family dynamics. "Why don't we just deal with this together?" Emily breathed, her mind racing with possibilities. Perhaps this moment could mark a turning point for each of them. Perhaps braving the truth would carve out space for healing. "We can't change the past, but moving forward starts with honesty," she concluded, her voice solid. She turned to Mark, searching his eyes for a semblance of agreement. Mark met her gaze, an acknowledgement that was neither fully accepting nor dismissive. He stood waiting in uncertainty, just as she did, yet Emily felt the embers of a fragile hope beginning to glow. Amy's small, resolute voice broke the weight of stillness. "I think it's time we tell each other everything." The tremor of unspoken words resonated through the room, leaving Emily aware that this was a pivotal moment in their lives. They were standing at the edge of a treacherous cliff, but to move forward required a shared plunge into the depths of their intertwined stories. Yet, as Emily absorbed the gravity of their situation, a chilling thought surfaced: what if exploring these fragments of truth only amplified the wounds? Would they emerge unscathed or further fractured? The siblings were left poised for a leap into the unknown while the storm of emotions brewed, ensuring that the aftermath would be anything but predictable. The turning point they craved was close, but the whispers of fear clung in the air like a heavy fog. "What if we're not ready for the depths we might uncover?" Emily instinctively murmured, her voice resonating with profound doubt. A lingering silence hung before them, both terrifying and laden with potential, assuring Emily this journey was just beginning. What lay ahead would demand not just their resolve, but the courage to unveil more than just buried memories. Emily's pulse quickened as she sat cradling the weight of her siblings' fragmented truths. It was a moment of reckoning, the air tinged with an unspoken challenge. This was not merely a conversation about their past, it was an invitation to face the specter of their family history. She felt a flicker of determination rise within her, a glint that might just illuminate the path forward. "Maybe we should start with what we remember," she suggested, her voice more resolute than she felt. If they were to embark on this journey, they had to confront their own narratives before diving into the chaos of pain. Mark's expression shifted, capturing a blend of skepticism and curiosity. "What if our memories are too clouded? What if they lead us in the wrong direction?" "That's the risk of facing the truth," Amy interjected. "But it's a risk worth taking. We've lived under the weight of these lies and half-truths for too long. We need to break free from that." The idea of tracking their individual recollections made Emily nervous, yet it illuminated a hidden desire for understanding their childhood experiences entwined with the mistakes of their parents. She wanted to believe that acknowledging this turmoil could offer some form of liberation. Maybe refuting their childhood misconceptions would unveil strengths they never acknowledged. "What do you remember about our mom?" Emily asked Mark, drawing a deep breath as she leaned forward. "The little things?" Mark hesitated, his brow furrowing as he delved into his thoughts. "She used to make pancakes on Saturday mornings, right? I remember that." His voice trailed off as if those sweet moments brought a light that felt far too distant. "Those pancakes always seemed like magic," Amy laughed softly, a glimmer of warmth splashing against the coldness in the room. Their scent would fill the air, and all the heaviness from the week vanished, at least for a little while. But as Emily soaked in the recollection, another feeling intertwined with warmth, a gnawing frustration. The joyous memory stood in stark contrast to the silence that had enveloped their family during darker times. What about the nights when she would disappear into her room? Emily probed softly, the question slipping out before she could cage it. The times when the laughter felt forced? A shadow flitted across Mark's features, revealing a vulnerability Emily hadn't anticipated. "I tried to pretend everything was fine," he confessed, the steadiness in his tone faltering. "If I focused on those moments, maybe she'd join me in that bubble of happiness." "Maybe we were all seeking that bubble," Amy said, her voice gaining strength. "But at what cost? Suppressing everything only made it worse." Emily's heart raced as realization dawned. They weren't just discussing their mother's struggles, they were unveiling their own coping mechanisms. What had they buried in order to avoid confronting the family wreckage? What were they capable of discovering about themselves in the process? As the silence stretched tentatively across the trio, Emily sensed a collective breath hovering in the room. The thought of excavating further, of laying bare hidden sentiments and regrets, set her on edge. But equally, it ignited something bold, a yearning buried beneath layers of confusion. What if we take a step back and think about ourselves, what we've become? She proposed, the urgency of her desire for growth mounting. What talents or strengths have we developed while orbiting around our parents' chaos? The query hung in the air as an unsettling stillness enveloped them again. It was easy to sit in mutual sorrow, to let the weight of their upbringing define them, but could they rise despite it? Mark exchanged glances with Amy, then turned back to Emily, uncertainties flickering in his eyes. "I've always leaned towards being the peacemaker," he said. "It's my default, but does that strength make me weak in some way?" "Not if you adapt it, if you learn to speak your truth even when it feels chaotic," Emily encouraged, sensing the shifting tides. "What about you, Amy? What have you discovered about your strengths?" Amy's brow furrowed before her posture straightened, capsizing the earlier hesitation. "I've always felt the need to care for others, but I've also realized I need to care for myself. Maybe it's a form of resilience." In that moment, they were not just siblings facing a daunting past. They were evolving into three individuals ready to confront the world as they learned to redefine their narratives. It was an uncomfortable evolutionary process, but one that could drive personal growth. The tension hung, oscillating between anticipation and fear, and Emily gripped the threads of her thoughts. "Let's keep going," she said quietly, feeling the embers of hope reignite. "Let us be brave enough to face those truths together." As the layers of time and pain began to peel away, the air crackled with an urgency and resolve like never before. But behind their burgeoning courage lay an unaddressed specter, the emotions they had never truly confronted. Emily felt its weight. As the revelations were just beginning, the toughest questions were still to come. What would they discover next, and would their resilience withstand the storm? The morning light broke through the window, illuminating Emily's determined face as she gathered her siblings again for another round of exploration. The fatigue from the previous night's revelations hung in the air, a reminder of what had been unearthed, but also a promise of what still awaited. She resolutely placed a journal on the table, its pages blank and eager for their truths. "Today, let's write it out," she proposed, urgency laced in her tone. "Each of us can note what we've hidden away, our thoughts, the things we've never shared." Mark shrugged slightly. "Do we have to? What if it just stirs up more of the same pain? We've done the digging, haven't we?" "It's not just about dredging up old memories," Emily countered, her brow furrowing as she reflected on their journey thus far. "It's about acknowledging how those memories shaped us. It's a way to redefine our stories." Amy nodded slowly, but her eyes were clouded with uncertainty. "What if we discover something worse? Something that feels impossible to face?" The question hung in the air, and for a fleeting moment, Emily felt that familiar knot of fear tightening in her chest. But nestled within it was something deeper, a reckless flame of courage that had sparked the night before. "What's worse than living in its shadow?" she challenged. "If we allow ourselves to feel it all, we might just find the strength to change it." After a brief silence, Mark picked up a pen. "Fine. I'll start," he said, his voice steadying. He wrote slowly, each stroke morphing the weight of his memories onto the pages, transforming what had been held inside for so long into tangible words. "Growing up, I felt invisible," he began, pausing occasionally as if trying to sculpt his thoughts along with the ink. "I thrived on being the mediator, but what about Mark? The one who often needed saving too? I never let myself be seen. And now I fear losing that role." Emily's heart ached for him. She could sense his struggle, the need to balance selflessness with his own identity. "Good," she encouraged softly. "What else?" The room was quiet but charged, each sibling grappling with their own truths. Emily picked up her own pen and began pouring out her own feelings, her fears of failure and her constant quest for validation ringing through her words. The act of writing became an anchor, solidifying reflections that had only been swirling in her mind. Minutes stretched into an hour, and soon Amy reluctantly joined them, unleashing her own tangles of emotions. "I've buried so much of myself in trying to care for others." Her handwriting flowed raw and honest. "But I need to rediscover my self-worth. I can't keep using it to validate others. I want to stand firm." As they scribbled on those pages, the air shifted. Once palpable discomfort transformed into a liberating exhilaration as they each embraced vulnerability. This was not merely catharsis. It displayed invisible scars, illuminating paths toward growth. Emily paused, scanning their writings, an epiphany coming forth. "You know, these feelings don't define us. They can become our strengths." The truth resonated, stirring a newfound sense of agency among them. They could reshape their narratives and imbue their experiences with purpose, aligning their past not as shackles, but as foundations for structure and growth. Mark, emboldened by the momentum, looked at Emily. "What if we shared these words? What if we even read them aloud to each other?" The proposition threatened to swallow her whole, but Emily felt the fire within her rise. "Let us do it," she said, determination crystallizing into clarity. "Not just for us, but as a commitment to understanding who we are meant to be." As they turned to one another, readying for the exchange, a sudden dread washed over Emily. What if the truths intertwined with pain cut deeper than any of them anticipated? Could they truly embrace what lay ahead without losing the fragile bond they had begun to forge? The writing was just a stepping stone to something larger. They would have to learn, but also confront the possibility of pushing right through to the heart of uncharted territory. With the ink still drying on the pages, Emily breathed in the heady mix of anticipation and fear kaleidoscoping within her as they braced for the next stage of their journey. What truths rested just beneath the surface, waiting to be unleashed? The moment hung like a fragile thread in the air as each sibling prepared for what lay ahead. Emily's heart raced, matching the drumbeat of uncertainty that echoed in the room. The pages were filled with revelations that would either unify or fragment them further. "Who wants to go first?" she asked, the words barely above a whisper. In truth, she felt a stab of hesitation. She was the leader of this endeavor, but now doubt gnawed at her resolve. Mark looked up from his notes, apprehensive yet resolved. "I will," he said, as if drawing strength from the other's presence. He shifted in his chair, straightening his back as though suddenly shouldering the ghost of their childhoods and the burdens entangled within them. He took a deep breath, the paper trembling slightly in his grasp. "I'm scared," he admitted, vulnerability cracking his usual calm demeanor. "I've been the peacemaker for so long, burying my own needs. But I'm not sure I can keep pretending. Not anymore." His words sliced through Emily's trepidation. They were both a revelation and a call to confront the front he had upheld for so long. The truth was demanding to be heard, and the room felt tighter as if they were encircled by shadows of their past. "Mark, that's huge," Emily said, her voice steadying. "What you're feeling, it matters. Letting us in is brave." She expected reluctance, a semblance of regret, but instead, a flicker of understanding moved across Mark's face. Drawing strength from his siblings, he continued reading, revealing how he felt overlooked and feared being left behind if he shifted focus onto his own needs. With each line, the fear of being judged mingled with an unexpected empowerment. Emily saw it, the way he found his voice as he vulnerably confronted the past. Then came Amy, summoning her courage. She closed her eyes for half a second, willing herself to project the strength she had uncovered while writing. "I've always thought I needed to save everyone else," she began. "But what if I'm the one who needs saving? I made myself invisible to avoid dealing with my own pain, and in doing so, I lost sight of who I was." Each reverberating word landed like a gentle echo, a wave at high tide, ready to reshape their collective understanding. Emily absorbed her sister's confession, feeling the weight lift from her own shoulders. Amy's bravery mirrored her own, reflecting the need to confront the root of their struggles instead of merely skirting them. As they exchanged words and unveiled layers, an invisible bond formed around truths long buried. When it was Emily's turn, She felt barbed wires constricting her throat. I've always sought validation. I thought if I proved I was worthy through accomplishments or by holding everything together I could outrun my own inadequacies. But I've realized it's a never-ending battle. The moment she spoke those words, she felt an avalanche shifting within herself. What if she allowed her own flaws to sit with her? What if being imperfect made her whole? The thoughts cascaded around the room like wildfire, igniting the embers of shared experience. I don't want to feel this pressure anymore. She could hardly recognize her own voice, thick with emotion. I want to rediscover who I am beyond others' expectations. Silence fell, pregnant with possibilities. Mark and Amy's expressions mirrored many newfound realizations. The pressure was not just personal, it had been incumbent upon them all to play roles in a story not entirely their own. What now? Amy asked, a hint of fear shadowing her eyes. Would their revelations fracture them, or would they emerge transformed? This question pricked at the hem of anxiety lurking in Emily's chest. With the weight of their truths aired, how would they forge ahead? What would it mean to navigate this new terrain of honesty? As they reflected, Emily's mind raced with possibilities. Perhaps they could forge a new pact, one of acceptance and understanding, as they rebuilt their familial ties forged on transparency. But that would require an openness none of them were entirely certain they could handle. That charged moment of vulnerability, a chilling realization struck Emily's heart. With each revelation, a choice lay upon the table. They could brace for unity or risk the schisms of exposure. Do we dare to go deeper? She asked finally, locking eyes with her siblings, raw nerves trembling in the air. Would they summon enough courage to face even darker truths nestling in their histories, truths that might threaten their fragile relationships? The stakes were rising, and the vulnerability needed to confront what lay beneath was monumental. What further unearthing awaited them as they delved deeper into their shared pasts? Emily drew a long breath, steeling herself with an ember of courage. The weight of their mixed emotions hung heavy in the air. Each revelation had enhanced their connection, but exposed fissures lay ahead. This moment demanded healing, and healing required willing vulnerability. Let us forge ahead, but let us do it together, she said, her voice steadied by resolve. What can we learn from the truths we've unearthed to reshape who we are today? The question lingered, an invitation that resonated with urgency. Mark exchanged glances with Amy, their expressions woven together in shared uncertainty. We've spent so long holding back, Mark finally said, the determination in his voice igniting hope. Maybe facing what we fear most could free us. Emily nodded, her heart racing at the prospect of deeper truth. Let us talk about how we can redefine our roles in this family. How can we support one another as we step into who we want to be? Drawing strength from their previous discussions, the siblings began to solidify a foundation for their transformations and opportunity for not just reconciliation, but for reawakening their identities intertwined through years of pain and misunderstanding. From now on, I refuse to be just the caretaker, Amy declared, finding purpose in her heart's quiet cry to be seen. I want to nurture myself as fiercely as I do others. The affirmation settled comfortably within Emily, resonating deeply. Inspired, Mark added, and I will learn to voice my own needs without guilt. My role as peacemaker doesn't have to mean my silence. I want to emerge as a whole partner. With ambitions taking seed, Emily felt a surge of faith in their collective potential. Yes, and I want to uncover passions outside my duties as a mother and nurse. I want to indulge in the things that breathe life into me, not just keep the family standing. This is about flourishing. As they articulated their new aspirations, an electric pulse filled the space around them, an awakening, the hazardous yet necessary promise of growth. They were no longer bound by parental expectations. Instead, they were poised to define their own paths. However, for each of them, those newly minted commitments also bore weight. What would it mean to relinquish their old identities, woven so tightly through both love and resentment? It felt perilous, yet exhilarating, the tension palpable. While we can't change the past, we can choose how it'll shape our future, Emily said, her determination crystallizing as she gazed into their futures with clarity. We owe it to ourselves to embrace our raw truths. The trio nodded, commitment blooming between them. They felt like warriors preparing for the inevitable battle of change. They had the armor of truth now, a shield to protect against the shadows that had once tormented them. As days passed into weeks, Emily actively pursued her newfound identities with unwavering purpose. She joined a painting class and rediscovered the joy of expressing herself on canvas. Each brushstroke reflected her emotions. It became an outlet, a reclamation of her own voice and individuality. Mark broke away from his corporate grind, actively engaging in community initiatives that aligned with his passions. No longer merely the peacemaker, he found fulfillment in advocacy for causes that resonated with him, each decision a step toward reinforcing his presence and voice. For Amy, life's orientation tilted within an unexpected direction as well. She began writing poetry, allowing her experiences and emotions to spill freely onto the page. It transformed her, offering clarity and a deep sense of self amidst the chaotic spin of her upbringing. Their individual pursuits became markers for familial bonds renewed. They began to gather once a week, not merely to confront shadows, but to celebrate each other's revelations each Friday, a dedicated moment to revel in the newfound complexities of who they were becoming. The growth that melted into their interactions was evident. Conflicts transformed into meaningful discourse. Moments that had once bristled with tension now sparked creativity, a shared resilience knitted together through the courage to innovate their legacies. One evening, as the sun dipped, casting colors across the horizon, Emily felt an enveloping sensation of fulfillment wash over her. They had not only faced the turmoil of their shared history, but had risen together, wholly transformed. With clarity came into focus an identity unfettered from the weight of others' expectations. I am not just defined by my past, but by how I respond to it now, Emily expressed one Friday evening, her eyes shimmering with the essence of triumph. Together, we're rewriting our narratives. Mark smiled, the warmth of familial bonds invigorating the air. Here's to each of us embracing our power to change one moment, one truth at a time. Yes, to the journey ahead. Amy raised her glass, laughter intermingling with the clinking of glasses, an acknowledgement of the deeper ties that now define them. United by choice, steered by intention, they each stepped from the shadows of their pasts into radiant paths of self-discovery. Individual voices harmonized into a symphony of support, echoing the potent message. They had not only crafted new identities, but had forged an unbreakable bond, the tapestry of truth stitched together with courage and authentic love. The transformation was complete. They had conquered the ghosts of yesteryear. Solid confidence radiated from each sibling, their established positions fostering a legacy of renewed compassion. What had begun as anxiety transformed into triumph, signaling unequivocally to all three the solid truth that change, however daunting, was the foundation upon which their new life could forever thrive. Now it was time to share this success, share their journey. So here it is, a powerful call to action for all of you. You need to subscribe now to witness more incredible stories of transformation and triumph. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us reach those who need inspiration in their lives. And remember, comment your thoughts on this journey and share your own theories about personal growth. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who resonate with the call for change and personal overcoming stories. Together, let us spread the message of hope, growth, and powerful storytelling.